Good day everyone, I'm FRUTO ADELYN the first reporter of Topic 3. Now let's proceed to Topic 3 of Strategic Management, the external analysis. Under the external analysis, there are industry structure, competitive forces, and strategic group. First, what is external analysis? External analysis is an objective assessment of the changing world in which an enterprise operates in order to have an early warning system for identifying potential threats and opportunities. When we say external, it is external feature or aspect of the company. Now let's proceed to PESTEL framework. What is PESTEL framework? PESTEL framework is an acronym of political, economics, sociocultural, technological, ecological, and legal. Although many of the PESTEL factors are interdependent, the PESTEL model provides a relatively straightforward way to scan, monitor, and evaluate the important external factors and trends that might impinge upon a firm. PESTEL framework identifies changes in the external environment of a company and to differentiate the competition and create a competitive advantage. For example, external forces in the firm's general environment are ones that managers have little direct influence over, such as macroeconomics factor, interest or currency exchange rate. In contrast, external factors in the firm's task environment are ones that managers do have some influence over, such as composition of their strategic group, a set of close rivals, or the structure of the industry. Next is the Exhibit 3.1. The firm embedded in its external environment, global world, PESTEL forces, industry, and strategic group. As you can see, the industry, strategic group, and firm are surrounded by the six forces, or the PESTEL forces. These forces are embedded in the global environment and can create both opportunities and threats. Now let's proceed to the P and L of PESTEL framework, political and legal factors. These two are almost the same. First, we discuss the political environment. What is political environment? Political environment describes the processes and action of government bodies that can influence the decision and behavior of a firm. This would include political policy and stability as well as the trade, fiscal, and taxation policies too. Government, for example, can affect firm performance by exerting political pressure on companies. Then the legal environment. Legal environment captures the official outcomes of political processes as manifested in laws, mandates, regulation, and court decision, all of which can have a direct bearing on firms' profit potential. They also must be aware of any changes in legislation and the impact this may have on business operation. In fact, regulatory changes tend to affect entire industry at once. Many industries in the United States have been deregulated over the last few decades, including airline, telecom, energy, and trucking, among others. In theory, removing or reducing government regulation tend to lead to a new firm entry, intensified competition, innovation, and higher value at lower price for consumers. The political and legal environment can have direct bearing on a firm's performance. Governments often combine political and legal factors to achieve desired changes in consumers' behavior. Therefore, these two factors can manifest the entire business operation just to follow policy of the government. Next is economic factors. Economic factors in a firm's external environment are largely macroeconomic, affecting economy-wide phenomena. Managers need to consider how the following 5 macroeconomic factors can affect firm strategy. The 5 macroeconomic factors are growth rates, interest rate, level of employment, price stability or inflation and deflation, and currency exchange rate. These factors impact on the economy and its performance, which in turn directly impacts on the organization and its profitability. The first macroeconomic factors is growth rates. The overall economic growth rate is a measure of the change in the amount of goods and service produced by a nation's economy. It indicates what stage of the business activity expanding, or what we call boom, or contracting, recession. In periods of economic expansion, consumer and business demands are rising, and competition among firms frequently decreases. During these economic boom cycles, businesses expand operation to satisfy demand and are more likely to be profitable. The reverse is generally true for recessionary periods, although certain companies that focuses on low-cost solutions may benefit from economic contractions because demand for their product or services rises in such times. Next, the second macroeconomic factor is interest rate. Another key macroeconomic variable for managers to track is interest rates. The amount that savers are paid for use of their money and the amount that borrowers pay for that use. For example, was fueled by cheap credit. Low interest rates have a direct bearing on consumer demand when credit is cheap because interest rates are low. However, when interest rates are high, consumer demand slows down, credit is harder to come by, and firms find it more difficult to borrow money to support operation and might defer investment. Next, the third macroeconomic factor is level of employment. The state of the economy directly affects the level of employment. In boom times, unemployed is low, and skilled human capital becomes a scarcer and more expensive resource. In economic downturns, unemployment rises. As more people search for employment, skilled human capital is abundant and wages usually fall. A period of high unemployment could be a good time for firms to expand or upgrade their human capital base. Next, the fourth macroeconomic factor is price stability. The lack of change in price level of goods and services is rare. Therefore, companies will often have to deal with changing price levels, which is a direct function of the amount of money in any economy. When there is too much money in an economy, we tend to see rising price, or what we call inflation. Indeed, a popular economic definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods and services. Inflation tends to go along with higher interest rates and lower economic growth. Then, if there is inflation, there are also deflation. Deflation is described as a decrease in the overall price level. A sudden and pronounced drop in demand generally causes deflation, which in turn forces sellers to lower price to motivate buyers. Then, let's proceed to the fifth or last economical factors is the currency exchange rates. Determines how many dollars one must pay for a unit of foreign currency. It is critical variable for any company that either buys or sells products and services across national borders. If the US dollar depreciate or decline in value, for example, it takes more dollars to buy 1 euro, which in turn makes European imports such as LVMH, luxury accessories, or BMW automobiles more expensive for US buyers. By the same token, U.S. exports such as Boeing aircraft or John Deere tractors benefit from a weaker U.S. dollar because it makes their products relatively cheaper when exported to Europe. This process reverses when the dollar appreciates increase in value against the euro. In summary, economic factors affect both domestic and global businesses. Next, let's proceed to the S of Pistol framework. Sociocultural factors capture a society culture, norms, and values because sociocultural forces not only are constantly in flux but also differ across groups. Managers need to closely monitor such as trends and consider the implication for firm strategy. For example, a growing number of US consumers have become more health conscious about what they eat. This led to a boom businesses such as Subway and Whole Foods. At the same time, traditional fast food companies such as McDonald's and Burger King, along with grocery chains such as Albertson and Kroger, have all had to scramble to provide healthier choices in their product offering. In order to avoid of losing or decreasing the sales, you need to follow what are trends to others. And under the sociocultural factors, there are what we call demographic. Demographic trends are also important in sociocultural forces. These trends capture population characteristics related to age, gender, family size, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, and socioeconomic. Demographic trends present also opportunity cost, opportunity but can also pose threats in business. Then the T of Pistol framework is technological factors. Technological factors capture the application of knowledge to create new processes and products. Recent innovation in process technology include lean manufacturing. The recent product innovation include the smartphone, computer, tablet, and others. Let's talk about the rapid progress in mobile computing. BlackBerry, once an undisputed leader in the smartphone industry, did not recognize early enough or act upon changes in the external environment. Consumer preference changed quickly as the iPhone and later the iPad become available. Professionals brought their own Apple device to work instead of using company issued BlackBerry. Although the Canadian technology company made a valiant effort to wake up lost ground with its new BlackBerry 10 operating system in several new models, it was too little and too late. In this technology factor, we need to give importance to the innovation strategy because consumer preference change quickly and it is based on what they needed the most. Again, I'm Fruto ADELYN Preconcilio, the first reporter of Topic 3, and that's all. Thank you.
For the final part of PESTEL framework, we have ecological factors. It is concerned board environment issues such as the natural environment, global warming, and sustainable economic growth. The organization and the natural environment coexist in an interdependent relationship. Managing this relationship in a responsible and sustainable way directly influences the continued existence of human societies and the organizations we create. In ecological factors, it is a determinant of our certain economy's performance. The factors include economic growth, exchange rates, inflation rates, interest rates, disposable income of consumers, and unemployment rates, where these factors may have a direct or indirect long-term impact on a company, since it affects the purchasing power of consumers and could possibly change demand or supply models in the economy. It also affects the way companies price their products and services. Now, let's proceed to the industry structure and firm strategy, the five forces model. When we say industry, it refers to a group of firms whose products are sufficiently close substitutes for each other that the member firms are drawn into competitive rivalry to serve the same needs of some or all the same types of buyers. In analyzing an industry, it is also useful to determine if the industry is a global industry. This is an industry that requires global operations to compete effectively. Industries differ widely in their economic characteristics, competitive situation, and the future outlooks. According to our research, understanding industry structure is the logical starting point for strategic analysis at the business level. Strategic position is called on a firm's strategic profile based on a value creation and cost, and a company's relative position within its industry matters for performance. Strategic positioning reflects choices a company makes about the kind of value it will create and how the value will be created differently than rivals. In speaking about strategies, the founder of the modern strategy field and one of the world's most influential thinkers on management and competitiveness is Michael Porter. He developed the highly influential Five Forces model to help managers understand the profit potential of different industries and how they can position their respective firms to gain and sustain competitive advantage. Porter's Five Forces of model is a simple but powerful tool for understanding the competitiveness of your business environment and for identifying your strategy's potential profitability. This is useful because when you understand the forces of your environment or industry that can affect your profitability, you'll be able to understand or you'll be able to adjust your strategy accordingly. For example, you could take fair advantage of a strong position or improve a weak one and avoid taking wrong steps in the future. Since 1979, this Five Forces model has become one of the most popular and highly regarded business strategy tools. Porter recognized that organizations likely to keep a close watch on their rivals, but he encouraged them to look beyond the actions of their competitors and examine what other factors could impact the business environment. Porter derived two key insights that formed the basis of his seminal Five Forces model. First, rather than defining competition narrowly as a firm's closest competitors to explain and predict a firm's performance, competition must be viewed more broadly to pass not only direct rivals but also a set of other forces in an industry, such as buyers, suppliers, potential new entry of other firms, and the threat of substitutes. Second, the profit potential of an industry is neither random or entirely determined by industry-specific factors. Rather, it is a function of the five forces that shape competition, such as threat of entry, power of suppliers, power of buyers, threat of substitute, and rivalry among existing firms. Now let's proceed to the competition in five forces model. The first major insight this model provides is the fact that while a firm's ability to create as large gap as possible between the value of the firm's product or services generates and the cost to produce, it is essential to create economic value. The firm must also be able to capture a significant share of it to gain and sustain competitive advantage. A competition within an industry is grounded in its underlying economic structure. It goes beyond the behavior of current competitors. The state of competition in an industry depends upon five basic competitive forces. The collective strength of these forces determines profit potential in the industry. The profit potential is measured in terms of long-term return on invested capital. The different industries have different profit potential just as the collective strength of the five forces differs between industries. Exhibit 3.2 shows the visual of Porter's five forces model. Porter's model identifies five key competitive forces that managers need to consider when analyzing the industry's environment and formulating competitive strategy. First, the threat of entry. Second, power of suppliers. Third, power of buyers. Fourth, threat of substitutes. And the lastly, rivalry among existing competitors. So the first one, threat of new entry. It describes the risk that potential competitors will enter the industry. Potential new entry depresses industry profit potential in two major ways. First, with the threat of additional capacity coming into an industry, incumbent firms may lower prices to make entry appear less attractive to the potential new competitors, which would in turn reduce the overall industry's profit potential, especially in industries with slow or no overall growth in demand. Second, the threat of entry by additional competitors may force incumbent firms to spend more to satisfy their existing customers. Larger investments in value creation further reduce an industry's profit potential in if prices cannot be raised. Your position can be affected by people's ability to enter your market. So, think about how easily this could be done. How easy it is to get a foothold in your industry or market. How much would it cost and how tightly is your sector regulated? If it takes little money and effort to enter your market and compete effectively, or if you have little protection for your key technologies, then rivals can quickly enter your market and weaken your position. If you have strong and durable barriers to entry, then you can preserve a favorable position and take fair advantage of it.
Hi, my name is Lisa May ARAQUE from BSBA-3C and the Strategic Management. My topic would be the entry barriers. So, of course, the more profitable an industry, the more attractive it is for new competitors to enter. There are, however, a number of important barriers to entry that raise the cost for potential competitors, which reduces the threat of entry. So, it's the entry barriers, obstacles that determine how easily a firm can enter an industry. Entry barriers are often one of the most significant protectors of industry profit potential. So, which are advantages for inconvenient firms are obstacles that determine how easily a firm can enter an industry. Inconvenient firms can benefit from several important sources of entry barriers, so such as the economies of scale, network effects, customer switching costs, capital requirements, advantages independent of size, government policy, credible threat of retaliation. So let's proceed. The first one would be the economies of scale. So economies of scale are cost advantages that accrue for firms with larger output because they can spread fixed costs over more units, can employ technology more efficiently, can benefit from a more specialized division of labor, and can demand better terms from their suppliers. So these are factors in turn drive down the cost per unit, allowing large and convenient firms to enjoy a cost advantage over new entrants not who cannot master such scale. So let's proceed to the next one, and that's the network effects. So Network effects describe the positive effect that one user of a product or service has on the value of that product or service for other users. So the threat of potential entry to reduce when network effects are present. So take for example the customers of online auctions are attracted to eBay because they can benefit from network effects with more than 100 million active users. Buyers are more likely to find the item they are looking for on eBay, while at the same time sellers are more likely to find buyers for the items are offering the ability to create markets where supply and demand will clear. When supplied and quantity demanded are equal, is a positive function of the number of users having secured a larger number of users. Network effects give eBay an advantage over any potential new entrant. So in similar fashion, Facebook with over 1 billion active users worldwide enjoys tremendous network effects, making it difficult for new entrants such as Google Plus to compete effectively. We will discuss it in the chapter 7. So let's proceed to the next one, the customer switching costs. So switching costs are incurred by moving from one supplier to another. Changing vendors may require the buyer to alter product specifications, retain employees, and or modify existing processes. That switching costs are therefore one-time sunk costs, which can be quite the significant and formidable barrier to entry. Like for example, the firm has been using enterprise resource planning ERP software from SAP for many years. It will incur significant switching costs when implementing implementing a new ERP system from Oracle. Likewise, switching from using a PC with a Microsoft Windows operating system to a Mac with Apple iOS required many hours to learning the new operating system and software applications. Since the Apple has been the smaller player in the PC market for many decades, it invested much more to entice users to switch from Microsoft Windows to Apple iOS than the other way around. Lowering customer switching costs allowed Apple to gain market share at the expense of Microsoft and PC makers such as Dell and HP. In similar fashion, the threat of potential new entry is high when customer switching costs are low. When entering the smartphone market with its iPhone, Apple was able to lower switching costs with an intuitive interface and using friendly design. The next one would be the capital requirements. So capital requirements describe the price of the entry ticket into new industry, how much capital is required to complete in this industry, and which companies are willing and able to make such investment. Frequently related to the economies of scale, capital requirements may encompass investments to set up plants with dedicated machinery, run a production process, and cover startup losses. And then take up for example the in the southern eastern United States, TV cable company Comcast has entered the business for residential and commercial telephone services and internet connectivity. As an ISP internet service provider, emerging as a direct competitor for AT&T, Comcast also acquired NBC Universal combined delivery and content. AT&T responded to Comcast threat by introducing UVerse, a product combining high-speed internet access with cable TV and telephone service. So, all provided over its super fast fiber optic network. And then, let's proceed to the next one. And that's the advantages independent size. So, inconvenient Firms often possess cost and quality advantages that are independent of size. These advantages can be based on brand loyalty, proprietary technology, preferential access to raw materials, and or distribution channels, favorable geographic locations, and cumulative learning and experience effects. And then that's the advantages of size, independent of size. And then the next one would be the government policy. Frequently, government policies restrict or prevent new entrants. Until recently, India did not allow foreign retailers such as Walmart or IKEA to own stores and compete with domestic companies. In order to protect the country's millions of small vendors and wholesalers, China frequently requires foreign companies to enter joint ventures with domestic ones and to share technology. But in the US, many states have restrictive licensing policies that limit the sale of liquor. City agencies such as the Network City Taxi and Limousine Commissions severely limit operating licenses, thereby preventing entry into an industry with otherwise low entry barriers. In contrast, the regulations in industries such as airplanes, telecommunication, and trucking have generated significant new entries. Therefore, the threat of entry is high when restrictive government policies do not exist or when industries become deregulated. And then the next one would be credible threat of retaliation. So potential new entrants must also anticipate how incumbent firms will react. A credible threat of retaliation by incumbent firms often deters entry. Should entry will still occur, however, incumbents are able to retaliate quickly through initiating a price war. Take for example, the industry profit potential can, in this case, easily fall below the cost of capital. Inconvenience with deeper pockets and new entrants are able to withstand price competitions for a longer time and wait for the new entrants to exit the industry, then raise prices again. Other weapons of retaliation include increased product and service innovation, advertising, sales, promotions, and licitations. So potential new entrants should expect a strong and vigorous response beyond price competition by incumbent firms in several scenarios. If the current competitors have made large-scale specific investment that are little used in other industries, unused excess capacity, substantial resources, reputation cloth with industry suppliers and buyers, and a history of reduced retaliations during earlier entry attempts. Moreover, if industry growth is slow or stagnant, inconvenients are more likely to retaliate against new entrants in order to protect their market share, often initiating a price war with the goal of driving out these new entrants. In contrast, the threat of entry is high when new entrants expect the inconvenience will not or cannot retaliate. So that's all for my report. Thank you.
Credible threat of retaliation. Potential new entrants must also anticipate how incumbent firms will react. A credible threat of retaliation by incumbent firms often deters entry, should entry still occur. However, incumbents are able to retaliate quickly through initiating a price war. For example, the industry profit potential can in this case easily fall below the cost of capital. Credible threat of retaliation in fosters 5 forces. Threat of new entrants refers to the threat new competitors. Expected retaliation of existing competitors and the existence of relevant. The power of suppliers. The suppliers industry is more concentrated than the industry itself too. Suppliers do not depend heavily on the industry for a large portion of their revenues. Incumbent firms face significant switching costs when changing suppliers. Suppliers offer products that are differentiated. There are no readily available substitutes for the products or services that the suppliers offer. Suppliers can credibly threaten to forward integrate into the industry. The power of buyers. In many ways, the bargaining power of buyers is the flip side of the bargaining power of suppliers. Buyers are the customers of an industry. The power of buyers concerns the pressure an industry's customers can put on the producers' margins in the industry by demanding a lower price or higher product quality. When buyers successfully obtain price discounts, it reduces a firm's top line revenue. When we see the power of buyers, power buyers in the industry affects the competitive environment for the seller and influence the seller's ability to achieve profitability. Strong buyers can pressure sellers to lower prices, improve product quality, and offer more and better services. We have a few examples of power buyers. Buyers have influence is insurance for house, car, and travel. A buyer can bargain with an insurer wanting to increase their premium if there are plenty of other companies offering the same service cheaper. Then the continuation, when buyers demand higher quality and more service, it generally raises production costs. Strong buyers can therefore reduce industry profit potential and with it a firm's profitability. Powerful buyers are a threat to the producing firms because they reduce the industry's profit potential by capturing part of the economic value created. Next, the power of buyers is high when we have a 4 buyers high when there are few buyers and each buyer purchase large quantities relative to the size of a single seller. Second, the industry's products are standardized or undifferentiated commodities. Third, buyers face low or no switching costs. And last, buyers can credibly threaten to backwardly integrate into the industry. When we see power of buyers, if suppliers are concentrated compared to buyers, there are few suppliers and many buyers. Then, suppliers' bargaining power is high. Conversely, if buyer switching cost, the cost of switching from one supplier's product to another supplier product. In addition, companies need to be aware of situations when buyers are especially price sensitive. This is the case when we have a 4 case. The buyer's purchase represents a significant fraction of its cost structure or procurement budget. Buyers earn low profits or are strapped for cash. The quality cost of the buyer's products and services is not affected much by the, and the last, quality cost of their inputs. Next, the threat of substitutes. Substitutes meet the same basic customer needs as the industry's product but in a different way. The threat of substitutes is the idea that products or services available from outside the given industry will come close to meeting the needs of current customers. When we see the threat of substitutes, a substitute product is one that may offer the same or similar benefits to a company as a product from another industry. For example, the availability of substitution threat affects the profitability of an industry because customer can choose to purchase the substitute instead of the industry product. A high threat of substitutes reduces industry profit potential by limiting the price the industry's competitors can charge for their products and services. The threat of substitutes is high when we have a true substitute. The substitute offers an attractive price-performance trade-off. Second, the buyer's cost of switching to the substitute is low. This is a true the threat of substitutes is high when. And the last, rivalry among existing competitors. Rivalry among existing competitors describes the intensity with which companies within the same industry jockey for market share and profitability. It can range from gentle to cutthroat. The other four forces, threat of entry, the power of buyers and suppliers, and the threat of substitutes, all exert pressure upon this rivalry. The strong the forces, the stronger the expected competitive intensity, which in turn limits the industry's profit potential. When we say rivalry among existing competitors, intense rivalry can limit profits and lead to competitive moves, including price cutting, increased advertising expenditures, or spending on service or product improvements. For example, high intensity of rivalry means competitors are aggressively targeting each other markets and aggressive pricing products.
Good day, everyone. Here's the continuation to the rivalry among competitors. It is stated a while ago that it is the intensity with which companies within the same industry jockey for market share and profitability. And so, intense rivalry can limit profits and lead to competitive moves, including price cutting, increased advertising expenditures, or spending on service or product improvement and innovation. Therefore, competitors can lower prices to attract customers from rival, wherein the industry profitability erodes. Alternatively, competitors can use non-price competition to create more value in terms of product features and design, quality, promotional spending, and after-sales service and support. Non-price competition is a marketing strategy in which one firm tries to distinguish its product or services from competing products on the basis of attributes like design and workmanship. So when non-price competition is the primary basis of competition, costs increase, which can also have a negative impact on industry profitability. However, when these moves create unique products with features tailored closely to meet customer needs and willingness to pay, then average industry profitability tends to increase because producers are able to raise prices and thus increase revenues and profit margins. Non-price competition's idea is to try to convince consumers that they should buy these products not just because they are cheaper, but because they are in some way better than those made by competitors. There are some factors that is largely determine the intensity of rivalry among existing competitors. First one is competitive industry structure, followed by industry growth, strategic commitments, and exit barriers. Competitive industry structure refers to elements and features common to all industries. The structure of an industry is largely captured by the number and size of competitors in an industry, whether the firms possess some degree of pricing power, the type of product or service the industry offers, commodity or differentiated product, and the height of entry barriers. There are four main competitive industry structures. They are perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. So, perfect competition. A perfectly competitive industry is characterized as fragmented and has many small firms. A commodity product is of entry and a little or no ability for each individual firm to raise its prices. The firms competing in this type of industry are approximately similar in size and resources. Every firm is a price taker. It takes the price as divided by the force of demand and supply. No firm can influence the price of the product. Consumers make purchasing decisions solely on price because the commodity product offerings are more or less identical. So in short, homogeneous product is produced by every firm where there are large number of buyers and sellers. Modern high-tech industries are also not immune to the perils of perfect competitions. Many internet entrepreneurs learn the hard way that it is difficult to deal the force of perfect competition. Fueled by eager venture capitalists, about 100 e-tailers such as Pets.com, Petobia.com, and Petstore.com had sprung up by 1999 at the height of the internet bubble. Cutthroat competition ensued, with online retailers selling products below cost. To make matters worse, at the same time, category killers such as PetSmart and Petco were expanding rapidly. As a consequence, most online pet supply retailers went out of business. So when these are small firms offering a commodity product in an industry that is easy to enter, no one is able to increase prices and generate profits. The ensuing price competition led to an industry shakeout, leaving online retailers in the dust. So that is the perfect competition. Next is the monopolistic competition. A monopolistically competitive industry is characterized by many firms, a differentiated product, some obstacles to entry, and the ability to raise prices for a relatively unique product while retaining customers. The key to understanding this industry structure is that the firms now offer products or service with unique features. The computer hardware industry provides one example of monopolistic competition. Many firms compete in this industry, and even the largest of them such as Acer, Apple, Dell, HP, and Lenovo have less than 20% market share. Moreover, while products between competitors tend to be similar, they are by no means identical. So as a consequence, managers selling a product with unique features tend to have some ability to raise prices. So when a firm is able to differentiate its product or service offerings, it carves out a niche in the market in which it has some degree of monopoly power over pricing. That's the name monopolistic competition. Firms frequently communicate the degree of product differentiation through advertising. The third one is monopoly. An industry is a monopoly when there is only one large firm supplying the market. So from the word itself, mono means one, and thus a monopolist is the only seller in a market. The firm may offer a unique product, and the challenge to moving into the industry tend to be high. The monopolist has considerable pricing power, and profitability tends to be high. Example of monopoly in the Philippines is the Meralco, where it has been granted by the Philippine Congress as a franchise to solely distribute electricity within its franchise area. There is also a so-called natural monopolies. And there are high barriers to entry. A company has a patent on their products or it is allowed by government to provide essential service. So, here is the industry competitive structure. It shows there the characteristic or feature of each of them. Like for example, in perfect competition, many small firms are price takers, commodity product, low entry barriers. While in monopolistic competition, there are many firms, some pricing power, differentiated product, medium entry barriers, while on the oligopoly, few large firms, some pricing power, differentiated product, high entry barriers, and on the monopoly, it consists only one firm, considerable pricing power, unique product, and very high entry barriers. Now, let's move on to the strategic commitments. If firms make strategic commitments to compete in an industry, rivalry among competitors is likely to be more intense. Strategic commitment defines as firms' actions that are costly, long-term oriented, and difficult to reverse. Strategic commitments to a specific industry can stem from large fixed cost requirements but also from non-economic considerations. For example, significant strategic commitments are required to compete in an industry when using a hub and spoke system to provide not only domestic but also international coverage. The traditional U.S. airlines, Delta, United, and American have large fixed costs. So to maintain their network of routes that affords global coverage, frequently in some conjunction, many with foreign and partner airlines, these fixed costs all accrue before the airlines sell any tickets. So high fixed costs create tremendous pressures to fill empty seats. So an airline seat on a specific flight is perishable, just like the hotel rooms not filled. Empty airline seats are often filled through price cutting. Given similar high fixed costs, other airlines respond in kind. Eventually, a vicious cycle of price cutting ensues, driving average industry profitability to zero or even negative number. To make matter worse, given their strategic commitments, airlines are unlikely to exit an industry.
I am MICKEE PIÑAS reporting the continuation of the external analysis, which is exit barriers. So what is an exit barriers? It is an obstacle that determines how easily a firm can leave an industry, are comprised of both economic and social factors. They include fixed costs that must be paid regardless of whether the company is operating in the industry or not. In general, industries that are difficult for new competitors to enter may enjoy a period of good profitability and limited rivalry among competitors. Typical barriers to exit include high specialized costs o mataas na gastos tulad ng pagsasara ng mga asset at mga gastos sa pagsasara. Adding a sixth force and strategic role of complements. As valuable as the five forces that has mentioned, that is for explaining the profit potential and attractiveness in industries. Intel's former chairman and CEO, Andy Grove, as well as strategy scholars, have suggested that the value of Porter's five forces model can be further enhanced if one also considers the availability of complements. Complements is a product, service, or competency that adds value to the original product offering when the two are used in tandem. It is an increased demand for the primary product, thereby enhancing the profit potential for the industry and the firm, while the complementor is a company that provides a good service that leads customer to value your firm's offering more when the two are combined. It is a complementor to your company if customers value product or services. In example, in the smartphone industry, Google is the complementor or company that provides goods and services of Samsung company. But as the days goes by, Google Apps has strong buyer from Samsung because it accounts for a large quantity of Google's overall sales to an Android operating system. And because of that, Samsung attempting to leverage its increased buyer from power to request a large share of online search revenues from Google. Then Google acquired a Motorola Mobility, a smartphone brand under Google company. Then Samsung and Google cooperate as complementors to compete against Apple's strong positions in the mobile device industry. Changes over time industry dynamics. Although the five forces plus complements model is useful in understanding an industry's profit potential, it provides only a point-in-time snapshot of a moving target. With this model, one cannot determine the changing of an industry or the rate of innovation. Industry structures are not stable over time, rather, they are dynamic. Firms that have a tendency to change the industry structure in their favor, making it more consolidated through mergers and acquisitions. Firm may change its structure depends on their favor in making more in one through merging o pagsasama-sama and acquisitions o pagkuha. Having fewer competitors generally equates to higher industry profitability. With fewer but larger competitors, incumbent firm can mitigate the threat of strong competitive forces such as suppliers or buyer power. The U.S. domestic airline industry has witnessed several large horizontal mergers between competitors, including Delta and Northwest, United and Continental, Southwest and AirTran, as well as American and U.S. Airways. These moves in turn allow the remaining carriers to enjoy a more benign industry. It also allows them to relieve some of the excess capacity in the industry as the merged airlines consolidated their network routes. The merger activity in the airline industry provides one example of how firms can proactively reshape industry structure in their favor. A more consolidated airline industry is likely to lead to higher ticket prices and fewer choices for customers, but also more profitable on airlines. Consolidated industry may also break up and become more fragmented. That generally happens when there are external shocks to industry such as deregulation, new legislation, technological innovation, and globalization. Unconsolidated industry may begin to break up and fragmented. This happens when there was shock external in an industry or new legislations or law and new technology and in globalization. Another dynamic to be considered in industry conversions, a process whereby formerly unrelated industries begin to satisfy the same customer need. It is that another dynamic is a process that those formerly industries begins to satisfy the needs of the customers. Explaining performance differences within the same industry, strategic groups. A strategic group is a set of companies that pursue a similar strategy within a specific industry in their quest of competitive advantage. It says that an strategic group may lead to become the industry quest for competitive advantage among any competitors. Strategic group model, which clusters different firms into groups based on a few key strategic dimensions.
This differences implies that the firm performance is determined not only by the industry to which the firm belongs, but also by its strategic group membership. It says that the difference indicate the performance that indicate industry are not just the only firm belongs, but also to those people who are in the team or to create strategic. That's all.
Mapping strategic group. To understand competitive behavior and performance within an industry, we can map the industry competitors into strategic groups. When mapping strategic group, it is important to focus on several factors, which is you have to identify the most important strategic dimensions, such as expenditures on research and development, technology, product differentiation, product and service offering, pricing, market segments, distribution channels, and customer services. And you have to choose two key dimensions for the horizontal and vertical axis, which expose important differences among the competitors. The dimensions chosen for the axis should not be correlated. Graph the firms in the strategic group, indicating each firm's market share by the size of the bubble with which it is represented. So let's see the exhibit 3.5 strategic groups and the mobility barrier in the U.S. domestic airline industry. The two strategic dimensions on the axis are prices charged and route service. As a result of this mapping, two strategic groups become apparent. As indicated by the dashed line, low-cost point-to-point airlines, which is Virgin Atlantic, Alaska Airlines, JetBlue, and Southwest Airlines, versus differentiated airlines using a hub-to-spoke system, which is American, Delta, and United. As we can see, the low-cost point-to-point airlines are clustered in the lower left corner because they tend to offer lower ticket prices but generally service a smaller number of routes due to their point-to-point operating system. The differentiated offering full services using a hub and spoke route system are so-called legacy carriers. This second strategic group clustered in the upper right corner because their ticket prices tend to be somewhat higher due to frequently higher cost structures. They usually offer many more routes than the point-to-point low-cost carriers, made possible by use of the hub and spoke system. This functional level strategy allows the legacy airlines to offer many different destinations. Like, for example, Delta's main hub is in Atlanta, Georgia. If you were to fly from Seattle, Washington to Miami, Florida, you would stop to change planes in the Delta's Atlanta hub in your way. So, let's move on to explaining performance differences within the same industry strategic group. This strategic group mapping in Exhibit 3.5 provides some additional insight. These are the external environment affects strategic groups differently. The 5 competitive forces affect strategic group differently, which is barrier to entry, buyer power, threat and substitutes, supplier power. Some strategic groups are more profitable than others. So let's look the 5 competitive forces discussed earlier. Barriers to entry, for example, are higher in the hub and spoke differentiated airline group than in the point-to-point low-cost airline group. Following the regulations, many airlines entered the industry, but all of these new players use the point-to-point system since hub and spoke airline can offer worldwide service and are protected from foreign competitions by regulation. They often face weaker buyer power, especially from business travelers. When they are flying the same or similar routes, the threat of substitutes is stronger. For the point-to-point airlines, this is because they tend to be regionally focused and also compete with car and bus travels, which are viable substitutes. The threat of supplier power tend to be stronger for the airlines in the point-to-point low-cost strategic group because they are much smaller and thus have weaker negotiation power when acquiring new aircraft. So historically, some strategic groups are more profitable than others. Airlines closer in the lower left corner tend to be more profitable when considering US domestic market only. Why? It is because they create similar or even higher value for their customers in terms of time, departures, and arrival safety. The fewer bags lost while keeping tickets cost below those of the legacy carriers. The point-to-point carriers are able to offer their services at a lower cost and a higher perceived value, thus creating the basis for the competitive advantage. So let's move on the mobility barriers. Although some strategic groups tend to be more profitable and therefore more attractive than others, mobility barriers restrict movement between groups. These are industry movement factors that separate from strategic group from another. The two groups identified in the US airline industry map in Exhibit 3.5 are separated by the fact that the group using hub-and-spoke operations as model offers international routes, while the point-to-point airlines generally do not. The international routes tend to be the only remaining profitable routes left for the legacy carriers. This economic reality implies that if carriers in the lower left cluster such as SWA or JetBlue would like to compete globally, they would likely need to change their point-to-point operating model to a hub-and-spoke model, or they could select a few profitable international routes and service them with long range to the low-cost model would require significant capital investments and likely departures from a well-functioning business model. Additional regulatory hurdles reinforce these mobility barriers, such as difficulty of securing landing slots at international airports around the world from the respective legacy barriers protect this profit sanctuary for the time being.